Is the U.S. supply chain collapsing? China's latest move is driving prices skyrocketing 20%. That's the shocking drop in U.S. imports from China just last year. What does this mean? Will prices continue to soar? Could essential goods disappear from shelves? The truth is, America's supply chain is in serious crisis as China cuts exports and reduces its holdings of U.S. bonds. Let's dive in and uncover how this move is reshaping the global economy forever. China cuts investment in the U.S. What's happening? Here's the reality. The U.S. has been too dependent on China. For decades, America benefited from low-cost imports from China, but now that economic order is collapsing as Beijing dramatically reduces its holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds. Why does this matter? Because Treasury bonds are a key source of funding for the U.S. government. If China cuts its investment, the U.S. will have to raise interest rates, borrow more, and face the risk of severe inflation. But that's not all. China is also tightening its grip on exports of critical materials, a move that could cripple key U.S. industries. Is the global supply chain collapsing? Let's look at some industries hit the hardest. Technology and electronics. Over 70% of consumer electronics in the U.S. come from China. If supply is cut, prices will skyrocket. Would you pay double for an iPhone? Automotive industry. Essential materials for EV batteries and auto components mostly come from China. If Beijing limits exports, the U.S. could face an electric vehicle supply crisis. Renewable energy. China controls over 90% of rare earth production, key for solar panels, wind turbines, and lithium batteries. If China restricts supply, America may fall behind in the clean energy race. And here's the real problem. U.S. companies can't quickly find alternative suppliers. Why? Because manufacturing costs in the U.S. are significantly higher than in China. The result? Consumers will pay the price. A study from the Peterson Institute for International Economics found that if this trend continues, the average American household could pay an additional $22,000 per year. Is the U.S. dollar losing its power? It's not just the supply chain. The U.S. dollar's dominance is also at risk. Consider this. China is increasing trade settlements in yuan RMB with major partners like Russia, Brazil, and India. BRICS nations have begun reducing their reliance on the U.S. dollar in global trade. The share of U.S. dollar reserves worldwide has dropped from 71% in 1999 to just 58% in 2023. If this trend continues, the U.S. could lose one of its biggest economic advantages, its ability to control global financial policies through the dollar. A major question arises. Is this the beginning of the end for U.S. dollar dominance? Can the U.S. respond to this crisis? The U.S. cannot afford to sit back, but the question is, what can it do to fight back? Some measures have been proposed. The CHIPS Act, a $52 billion investment to boost domestic semiconductor production. But is it enough? Experts estimate that it could take over a decade to build a self-sufficient supply chain. Encouraging companies to relocate supply chains to friendlier nations like India and Mexico. But production costs will be significantly higher, increasing tariffs on Chinese goods. But this will only make prices rise even further for American consumers. So, what's the real solution? Can the U.S. quickly reduce its reliance on China, or is it already too late to change the game? The decisions made today will determine the future of the global economy. What do you think? Can the U.S. turn this around? Stay tuned for the next developments.
Breaking overnight, President Trump enacting sweeping new tariffs on steel and aluminum, 25%. Europeans are retaliating in a major way.
Will the trade relationship between the U.S., EU, and Canada collapse? Trump's re-imposition of tariffs has prompted the EU and Canada to decide on a strong response. Where will this tension lead? President Donald Trump, famous for his protectionist policies, has once again criticized the European Union. Why? According to him, the EU's unfair trade practices and the global overcapacity in production have harmed domestic industries. As a result, Trump has decided to reimpose a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports from the EU. This decision aims to protect America's strategic industries, but it also comes as a shock to EU countries, especially when the EU has always seen this as a move to protect U.S. national security.
It'll be 25%. generally speaking, and that'll be on cars and all other things. And European Union is a different case than Canada.
Additionally, Trump continues to criticize the EU for its digital services tax measures, particularly adjustments targeting major U.S. tech companies like Apple and Meta. This adds another blow to the already complicated relationship between these trading partners. Faced with Trump's tariff policies, the EU is not sitting idly by. The European Union has decided to impose retaliatory measures, with tariffs amounting to up to $28 billion on U.S. goods. However, the EU's goal is not just to respond, but also to hit products from key states controlled by the Republican Party. The main items affected include agricultural products, such as soybeans from Louisiana, beef and poultry from Nebraska and Kansas. Consumer goods, cars, and luxury items are also on the target list. Clearly, the EU is choosing to apply pressure on America's politically sensitive areas to force the Trump administration to reconsider its tariff policies.
Die Zollbeschlüsse der USA für falsch. Und wir werden darauf angemessen und schnell reagieren. Die Vorschläge der Kommission werden wir jetzt prüfen. Dazu stehen wir in engem Kontakt mit der Kommission und den anderen Mitgliedstaaten.
It's not just the EU. Canada is also in the mix. With retaliatory tariffs amounting to $29.8 billion Canadian dollars, around $20.7 billion US dollars, Canada is primarily targeting steel and aluminum, the products it exports the most to the US. This will seriously impact the steel, aluminum, and automobile industries in the US, industries that rely heavily on supply from Canada. In addition, these measures will affect consumer goods and automobile manufacturing industries in the U.S., which are already struggling to compete with foreign producers. How will the U.S. administration respond when its traditional partners, like Canada, ramp up retaliatory actions like this? Despite the serious trade tensions, the EU and Canada continue to maintain their long-standing strategic relationships. Especially in the context of reducing reliance on energy from Russia, the EU has sought opportunities to collaborate with Canada to export energy to the European market. This is not only an opportunity for Canada, but also a long-term strategy for the EU to ensure stability in energy supply. Canada, a country rich in mineral resources, is working together with the EU in this field, which not only helps Canada boost exports, but also helps the EU reduce reliance on suppliers from unstable countries. Undoubtedly, the tensions between the US, EU, and Canada are a crucial factor shaping the global economic order in the coming years. If the transatlantic relationship continues to escalate, it could change not just the US economy, but also the distribution of global influence. Stay tuned for the next updates in the video, as we will dive deeper into these impacts and explore what may happen in the future. After Canada announced a $760 billion USD plan to retaliate against Trump's tariffs, the EU quickly responded with a $40 billion USD retaliatory tariff package. Is this the beginning of a global trade war? The European Union didn't take long to respond. Right after President Trump imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, the EU quickly introduced a €26 billion retaliatory tariff package, equivalent to about $40 billion US dollars.
Similar to Canada's, they've been very quick and very strict, announcing retaliatory duties on industrial and farm products totaling €26 billion.
The products targeted include industrial items like machinery, cars, and agricultural goods like fruits, vegetables, and wine. Recently, the EU has imposed tariffs on over 2,800 US products, including items like Levi's jeans, whiskey, and Boeing spacecraft. US businesses, particularly in agriculture and industry, will face significant losses due to the loss of export markets. And not only that, they will also face increased production costs. Trade between Canada and the EU has grown by 7% since the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, took effect. A wave of Canadian businesses has quickly taken advantage of this agreement, shifting from the US to potential markets in Europe and Asia. What will the future hold for US businesses? Mexico, one of the US's largest trade partners and the second largest steel exporter, has chosen a slow and steady approach in its response. They didn't rush to impose retaliatory measures immediately. The Mexican government, under President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, decided to negotiate and seek a peaceful solution. But at the same time, They didn't rule out the possibility of imposing tariffs on U.S. goods if necessary. However, Mexico isn't just facing the impact of U.S. tariffs, but also dealing with a decline in exports and the escalating trade tensions that could greatly affect its economy. Analysts forecast that Mexico's steel industry will need to reduce output, while the agricultural sector will face significant challenges, dealing with higher tariffs on products like tomatoes and avocados. The situation in Brazil is not much different. As the second largest steel exporter to the U.S., Brazil is trying to find a way to respond to this decision. Brazil's finance minister, Fernando Haddad, criticized the U.S. tariffs as unreasonable and wrong, and declared that they would seek legal measures at the World Trade Organization, WTO. However, like Mexico, Brazil has decided not to rush into retaliation, but instead will patiently pursue negotiation options to avoid escalating tensions. Tariff retaliations not only affect the partner countries, but also have a significant impact on U.S. businesses. The steel industry will be one of the most affected sectors, as the new tariffs will raise the cost of imported steel, increasing production costs in U.S. factories. This not only drives up product prices, but also diminishes the competitiveness of U.S. products in the international market. The EU has shown strength in this decision and has not hesitated to respond forcefully.
The objective is to counterbalance the increased trade value affected by the U.S. tariffs while minimizing the impact on European businesses and consumers. But the disruption caused by tariffs is avoidable if the U.S. administration accepts our...
However, the issue is not just about the tariffs, but also the political relationship. EU countries have agreed that the U.S. tariff policy not only has a negative impact on the global economy, but also disrupts stability in international trade relations. Stay tuned, because the twists and turns could impact you. Canada has just canceled the F-35 deal. Portugal has also withdrawn, and now a move that could change the North American defense landscape.
Comes just 2 days after a similar decision by Portugal. In January 2023, the Trudeau administration had signed a contract with Lockheed Martin to purchase 88 F-35 fighter jets.
Canada has just grabbed the world's attention by deciding to cancel the $19 billion USD deal to purchase 88 F-35s from Lockheed Martin, a deal they signed in 2023. And it's not just Canada. Portugal has also announced its withdrawal from the F-35 program. These two countries are now seeking alternative defense solutions, no longer depending on the U.S. and aiming for independence in protecting national security. The reason for canceling this deal is directly tied to the trade and political tensions between Canada and the U.S., especially under the leadership of Donald Trump. With protectionist policies and severe tariffs, reliance on the U.S. for defense is no longer a safe option for Canada. For Portugal, the decision to withdraw from the F-35 program is equally significant. Portugal's defense minister, Nuno Melo, pointed out that the instability in U.S. foreign policy under Donald Trump has made it impossible for them to continue pursuing the plan to acquire these fighter jets. The country is now seeking replacement fighter jets while building a more flexible and independent defense force, reducing dependence on traditional partners. So, if it's not the F-35, then which fighter jets will replace them in Canada's defense strategy? One of the most promising options right now is the Saab J39 Gripen, a product from Sweden. Saab has proposed building the Gripen in Canada.
There's a commitment, a legal commitment to buy those. But another jet is being talked about a lot, which is the Saab Gripen. That was the runner-up in the long procurement process to get these F-35s lined up. And they'd committed to make more.
Which would help transfer technology and develop the domestic defense industry of the country. This is a great opportunity for Canada to gain more autonomy in equipping its military and defense systems, while maintaining strong cooperation with NATO countries. While Canada is looking for these alternative solutions, the country's defense industry is also growing strongly. Canada has a defense industry that contributes about 10 billion Canadian dollars annually to the economy and creates more than 64,000 jobs. Companies like General Dynamics Land Systems in Ontario and CAE Inc. in Montreal are supplying essential military products for Canada's armed forces and government agencies. The Canadian government is also accelerating domestic defense technology development programs, aiming to reduce dependence on international partners. On the other hand, The shift in Canada's defense strategy is not just an internal shift, but also reflects a broader trend in global military relations. The European Union, EU, with countries like Germany, France, and Italy, has increased defense spending by more than 30% from 2021 to 2024, reaching approximately 326 billion euros by 2024. Europe is now looking to reduce reliance on U.S. military systems, while promoting autonomy and developing advanced defense technologies. The EU's Rear Europe initiative, which is expected to raise up to 800 billion euros to invest in defense, shows Europe's determination to achieve strategic autonomy in military systems. Canada is also working strongly with European countries in developing alternative defense solutions and sharing technology. The military cooperation between Canada and European countries is becoming an important part of Canada's defense strategy, helping create a more independent and flexible defense force. Along with this, European countries are also intensifying initiatives to ensure defense autonomy, reducing reliance on external partners outside the region. Stay tuned for more exciting developments to come. The truth about Greenland and Canada. Why they don't want to join the US over the past few days. Hundreds of Greenlanders have taken to the streets, protesting against the idea of becoming part of the United States. Meanwhile, Canada has made it crystal clear. It will never become the 51st state. But why are Donald Trump's expansionist ambitions meeting such massive resistance? Let's dive into it. Greenland's rejection of U.S. annexation. On March 2nd, a large-scale protest erupted outside the U.S. consulate in Greenland. Protesters carried banners with strong messages, rejecting Trump's claim that Greenlanders want to join the U.S. According to a new survey by the Greenlandic Broadcasting Corporation, KNR, a staggering 92% of Greenlanders oppose the idea, affirming their commitment to remaining part of Denmark. So why did Trump insist that Greenland wants to be part of America? Back in 2019, Trump made an outrageous proposal to buy Greenland from Denmark. His justification? That the US could protect Greenland from Russia and China. But here's the thing. There was no survey, no real evidence, and no public demand from Greenlanders themselves. Many experts saw it for what it really was, a strategic distraction rather than a serious plan. And guess what? It backfired. Stay tuned, because what comes next will shock you. Canada rejects being the 51st state. Not only did Greenland reject Trump's ambitions, Canada did too. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, said it loud and clear. Canada is not for sale and will never become part of the United States. And let's be real, Canada is one of the world's most developed nations. It has a strong and independent economy. It has social policies that prioritize universal health care, education, and strict gun control. Does that sound like the US? Not even close. Despite their massive trade relationship, totaling $793 billion per year, Canadians do not want to become part of America. In a survey by the Angus Reid Institute, 89% of Canadians rejected the idea of merging with the US. Why? Because the differences between these two nations are just too big. Healthcare. Canada has universal health coverage, while in the US, millions struggle to afford medical care. Gun control. Canada has strict gun laws. Meanwhile, in the US, over 45,000 people die from gun violence every year. Social policies. Canadians value a strong safety net, while many US policies favor the wealthy over the working class. Given these massive differences, why would Canada ever consider joining the US? Trump strategy. Why it failed. So why did Donald Trump push this idea in the first place? Some experts believe it was nothing more than a distraction. Think about it. When Trump made the Greenland purchase proposal in 2019, the US was dealing with a trade war with China, a tumbling stock market, rising unemployment concerns, and what better way to distract the media than with a wild claim about expanding US territory? But it didn't work. Instead of gaining support, Trump infuriated US allies. Denmark called the idea absurd. Canadian politicians slammed it as delusional, the international community began to question America's true intentions. And let's talk about the economic consequences. Trump's reckless rhetoric created uncertainty in North American markets. In the 6 months following his statements, the S&P 500 saw a 7% drop due to market volatility. Was this all worth it? The bigger picture. This isn't just about Greenland and Canada. This is about something much bigger. It's about the U.S. trying to expand its influence, sometimes in ways that backfire spectacularly. But here's the real question. Are these actions actually strengthening America's position on the world stage, or are they damaging its credibility? One thing is certain, the pushback from Greenland and Canada is a clear sign that America's expansionist dreams aren't welcome, and the fallout is far from over. Stay with us, because in the next segment, we'll expose more shocking details that you won't want to miss.